Okay, so let's talk about July. July was a month of learning to let go and feeling a little bit more relaxed and experimenting with new work patterns. So the really big thing, it was a mixed bag. I did have a lot of fun. Ultimately, the work experiment that I tried failed, but that's one of the really important reasons as to why I think it was so key that I saw it as an experiment rather than like this is a permanent change moving forward. So I think I went to a gig in Manchester, had loads of fun. That was a few days, and then I think because I was overwhelmed and overstimulated from the shift change, I allowed that to change. That allowed that to turn into like a few weeks of kind of being a little bit too relaxed on food, not really sticking to my workout schedule like at all. I pretty much stopped training for like 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, and also like fell off with like going to the sauna and just generally doing the stuff which makes me feel good in my body and in my mind, which obviously can have a big carryover into like how your emotional state is too. So I was kind of conscious of all that stuff going on, but I knew that I needed to let myself have a little bit of a pressure release because with working the hours that I was working, I was really struggling to stay on top of all that stuff. So to beat myself up about it, it's like it's just digging yourself further into a hole, which for all intents and purposes is arbitrary because it's not like I quit my job and I became homeless. I just basically stopped eating like completely clean organic food every day and didn't work out for a few weeks. So it wasn't that much of a biggie. And I knew that ultimately I would return to it. So what I did, really, I just sort of like felt it. I chose to see it as an opportunity to have a few weeks of being more relaxed in general. At any moment I could have chose to go to the gym. At any moment I could have chose to go to the sauna, and at any moment I could have chose to make some healthy food. I think because I had the awareness and the ability to stand back from the situation and see that I was overwhelmed, and I could see that because of what I was struggling with, that then gave me the insight as to, that experiment that you tried with work hasn't worked because that's the only thing that's actually changed. You changed your hours at work. I condensed my hours, so rather than working 5 days, I worked 4 days, still doing the same amount of hours per week, but obviously I was working longer per day. Because I thought that having that extra day off per week would have balanced out those extra hours on the 4 days, and obviously get 3 days a week, a lot more relaxed, work-life balance, all that sort of stuff, and it just did not fucking work. The 4 days just absolutely crucified me mentally. It wasn't even so much being at work for those amount of hours because I've done those kind of long shifts as well, but because I drive, the amount of concentration that you have to have at work anyway is very high. So then having to keep that level of focus for an extra 25% per day, I was just absolutely wiped. I was getting migraines, and I've never had a migraine in my entire life. I'm 29, and I've only ever started with migraines since doing those extra hours per day. So yeah, I just really looked at that and saw the signs, and then made the decision to go back onto the normal 5-day board, which I'm now on. Hence the reason why content is being created again. I'm back exercising, meal prep's good, sauna's going good, I'm socializing. So I just really needed to make this July recap all about how it's super important to make these experiments and make the decisive moves to see how it will feel. But then also just really remember that you have to be very objective and not lose sight on the actual experiment that's in place. And this is why it's really important to talk with friends, because I was just wanting to like push through, and I didn't want to face the fact that something might not have worked and all that kind of thing. And I just had a friend that was like, you know, he basically said to me like, "What's going on?" I was like, "What do you mean?" He was like, "You know that these shifts aren't working for you, right?" And I was like, "Yes." He was like, I've never known you to once you've figured out that something's not working, or once you've got an idea for something, he said, I've never known you to not just immediately try it. He was like, so I know that it's really fucking you up because you don't even have the energy or the decisive energy to stop yourself being in a situation that's making you worse. And I was like, holy fuck, you know, when someone just paints a picture for you. So yeah, this is not a preachy kind of thing. This is a plea. You know, if you've got yourself into a situation and it's really not fucking doing you good, just for the love of God, get out of that situation. I have found that taking time off from like eating clean and meal prepping and like sticking to my workout schedule, it has done me a little bit of good. I always feel like a little bit of time off's very beneficial because for me, it's always been a case of when I go back with a little bit more of a relaxed approach. I don't fixate on things as much. Like I'm a little bit more lenient, but also on the opposite side of the coin, I'm more. I'm hungrier for it. I'm more determined to keep my routine structured and make that progress and feel the benefits of eating good food. And it doesn't come from like an obsessive like need to control. It comes more from a place of enjoying the benefits of it and appreciating that structure and what that does for me, sort of like just generally with my time and being organized, and also what it does for my mental health. Like when I'm training a few times a week, I'm going to the sauna like once or twice a week, and I'm eating, you know, when I'm eating good, I'm eating like at least 90% of my entire diet is like organic, freshly made, or like meal prepped, homemade foods. Maybe 10% of it is like I might buy a sandwich here or, you know, a packet of crisps there, but that's maybe like one small bit every couple of days rather than eating that sort of stuff every day. So yeah, it's just nice to be back in that place of just feeling good and feeling healthy. So I think like on reflection of that month, it was a big experimental month. The experiment didn't work, and I think that's why it's so important to have like a really strong baseline, because if you don't have that baseline in there to start with, you don't know if you're actually improving or you're worse off. And I think I know for a fact that that's why that spreadsheet that I use, where I sort of track everything that I do each day, add it up each day and see how many points I get. At the end of the week, I've got a total for the amount of points, and then I sort of diary for the week to see how I am. And that's just a really objective view of what I'm doing, how it's making me feel. And I could see that over the course of the few weeks where I was on that, well, I say a few weeks, it was like 8, 10, 12 weeks where I was doing the longer hours. I could see that every week it was sort of like going up and down, but it was going up and down and slowly getting lower and lower averagely. So even though my friend told me, even though I saw it on there, it's like fundamentally as humans we don't want to be wrong. So it's super important that you've got some sort of baseline, or you've got somebody in your life that can see things going well, whether it's journaling, whether it's doing what I do with that spreadsheet. Because when you try something new and you want it to work, it might be a case of that you don't let it fail, quote unquote, because then that ultimately means that you're wrong. And nobody really likes being wrong, especially when you were sort of excited about the fact that this new thing might help. So I think, yeah, that was July. I needed a big course correct. And ultimately, I'm very happy that I did the work experiment, because now I 100% categorically know that that shift pattern is not for me. And I had so much curiosity about it. Like I spent so much time learning all the extra routes and like adjusting my schedule and you know, putting a lot of effort into figuring out how I can do this and how I can do that. And none of that was wasted, because, you know, sometimes knowing that something is not for you is way better than spending energy on wondering, you know, thinking about it, you know, trying to figure out. And it's like, no, you just need to know. So yeah, that was July. It was pretty crazy. very happy that we are firmly into August now. And you know, I didn't criticize myself for not making content or going and socializing or being to the gym because work was taking up so much energy. I was just absolutely just, you know, I was just fucked basically. So yeah, it's nice to be out of it. I've spent a little bit of time building myself up, getting the foundations, and generally feeling good so that I can then be in a good place and a good frame of mind to make these videos again. Because that's what it's all about, you know. It's not about flogging yourself to death and working until you're sleeping 6 days a week, 7 days a week. So it works for some people, but I appreciate the small things in life, and yeah, I'm practicing what I preach as much as I possibly can. So it's a short one for today. I do have to go to work. The markets are going pretty interesting today. It's the 13th of August when I'm recording this. Ethereum is just about to poke, I think like 4,000, what is it, 4,000 something dollars, $4,600, which is pretty much an all-time, equal to an all-time high in a monthly close. So I am moving a few things around on that. And then I've got some socializing time after work because one of my really good friends is back from Japan for a week. So yeah, busy times, lots of good vibes, and making time for the shit that's important. Peace and love.